back to our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Today's project is a set of 4, there's 2 more in the other garage, mid-century modern chairs. These chairs are in really rough shape. I picked up all 4 for $15 because they were broken and they need a lot of repairs. This video is just going to focus on 2 methods of repairing the same type of damage on these 2 chairs. Maybe I'll make a separate video on refinishing these and finished product and all that, but I just really wanted to kind of focus on how we're going to repair the damage to this corner of this chair and this corner of this chair. Understand also there's more damage, there's splits, there's missing stretchers, things that you've seen me fix before. But for today we're just going to focus on this corner and this corner, and I'll bring you in and show you what we're dealing with. Okay, on this chair you can see this corner's been broken out, and it's about maybe 2 inches high, 3/4 of an inch wide, and it's a fairly clean break. And the shape would be to bring this over square and then taper up to this horn like you see here. We're going to do this one with epoxy putty. And the reason we're going to do that is I want to show you how strong that stuff can be. It's really remarkable. I took a class with Mohawk and we did a repair with that stuff on a piece of broken molding, and you would not believe how strong that came out. So we're going to use epoxy on this one. And we look over here and we have a really big problem here. And what we'll do with this one is glue a new piece of walnut onto this end and then cut it on the bandsaw and carve it to shape. So the first thing we need to do before we can get started with any of this is to break these chairs apart. And we'll take these seats off, and then you've seen me do it. I use either a rubber mallet and sometimes some heat, and we'll label them and break these chairs apart. So let me get to that and I'll bring you back. Okay, I took the third chair, the left leg assembly off the third chair. It's been damaged too, but right now it's being held on by a screw and a nail by whoever decided to fix it last. But you can see what's missing on the piece that we're going to inlay a piece of wood into. So the piece of wood we scarf on here has to be big enough to accommodate all that. Also notice it looks as though our broken piece has been sawn, so it's nice and smooth. So I'll just scrape and sand that, and then we'll glue a piece on. As far as the species of wood, I think this may be mahogany rather than walnut. I'm not an expert at by any means, so I may be wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and use mahogany to patch this. And with our piece clamped in the vise, I'm going to use a razor blade and start scraping off all the glue and any of the other goo in there that needs to come off before we can get a good glue joint. I'll bring you back. And I selected a piece of mahogany and I traced this angle out across the replacement piece that I'm going to use, and you can see now how that is going to fit in there very well. We can scarf those in, and then we can, actually that goes back here, and then we can carve that to shape. So the next step is for me to glue and clamp this up and let it set overnight. That glue up was a little difficult. The wood kept wanting to slide around, but we finally got it. We've got some nice glue squeezed out along the seam. It's back where it needs to be. So we'll let that sit overnight, and then tomorrow we will mark it and run it through the bandsaw to replicate the shape it's supposed to have, and do some work and try to conceal these joints the best we can. This scarf joint was extremely slippery with the glue in it, and it really was aggravating trying to get it glued up. Okay, we're going to repair this break with Tootsie Roll epoxy putty. This is what I'm using. This is by Mohawk. It's their epoxy putty stick in mahogany. And as I showed you before, it comes in 2 parts. You just knead it until you get a uniform color. You got about 5 minutes to get it on, and once it hardens up, it's incredibly strong. If you want, you can drill holes or do whatever you think you need to facilitate the adhesion of the putty to the chair. My experience is, especially in a break like this where you've got these flutes and all, you just don't need it. It's not necessary. Okay, we just push this in. And I like to go real hard with the first layer, and that ensures that it's adhered. And now if you start to look at your planes, and I don't mean airplanes, I mean geometric planes. I gotta take my gloves off. And you just spray a little water on your tools, it'll help glide them over. But we have this plane here. Don't be afraid to get it on there. I want to make sure that if I lay a straight edge on that plane, which I'm doing, that my putty goes all the way across and we're low. Now don't worry if you can't get the whole repair done in the first 5 minutes of open time. Just come back and put down a second coat, second layer. Alright, now your next plane is on this side, and the intersection of those 2 planes, of course, will determine your corner. You can see how the tool will pull, but if you wet it with some water, you can even use soapy water or just regular water, it glides again. Now as far as this little horn, I'm just kind of looking at what I've got on the other side. Okay, this is starting to set up now, so it's going to get difficult to do much more with it until it completely sets up, and then I can start to sand it and start to shape this corner. But you can see what I've done is I've got this this plane here started. We need to fill in this right here, even with that, right up to this sweeping corner. And then this plane here has to be flush. So we're going to let it set up and we'll come back. And we're back. And it's going to be a little difficult, I think, for you to see this, but we need this all to be flat. And it's down pretty low, so we got some building up to do. And what I'm doing is just following the existing planes and building up our putty. Bring it as close as we can to the original. You see, by using two fingers together, you can help form that corner, that intersection of the two planes. Don't worry about the excess stuff. You get that off. It's kind of hard to do this and show this at the same time because I've only got a couple of minutes to get my putty on before it hardens up. What I'm doing here is I've got water on this and I'm just using the pad of my thumb to smooth things out. You'll develop your own techniques that'll work for you. I think we're going to let that dry and then we're going to start sanding back and see how we do. What I'm doing here is blending any high spots in. It makes it just a little bit easier when it comes time to sand. The other thing you can do, of course, before it dries is just go into places where you don't need your putty and just pull it off. But you can see we've already got that corner pretty well rebuilt. Excuse me if my hand's in the way. Again, same thing here, just shaping. Like I said, there's really no great secret to any of this. This is just high school art class, I guess, which I wasn't very good at, by the way. Alright, we're going to let that set up. But you see how that's worked. Now, obviously, anybody that's concerned, you're going to say, well, that's not going to hold, it's going to chip, it's going to break. It's not. I'm telling you, this stuff is like cement. It's really, really impressive material. You'll see. We're going to let that set up and get hard, give it about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to start to sand it, and that'll identify any low spots we got to deal with. Okay, gave it about a half hour while I took a little break, and we'll just use some 120 grit. And as you know, what you see as light are the high spots, and what you'll see as dark are the low spots. And when we're all done, we want that to be all one level. And I will bring you back when I've got that sanded. I took it outside so I could sand it with the power sander, but you can see as I lift this up, there's the area that has been filled in by the putty, and it is just absolutely rock solid. I have a little bit of a low spot right there that I want to take care of, and then I want to work this inside radius just a little bit. But you see we have our nice square corner that we need, and we have actually this edge right along here that will clean up a little bit more with some sandpaper, and then down in here. But there you go. That's how you use epoxy putty to fill a big piece off like that. Okay, I'm going to finish sanding this and probably call it a day for today, and we'll get back on these chairs tomorrow. Good morning. It's the next day. Let's see how we did. Okay, we've got wood glued on there. We've got a seam right here that we'll have to get rid of when we refinish it. But we'll be tracing the shape of the other piece on here, and hopefully we've got enough wood on this side to make it happen. So let's see. Okay, we've laid the other piece of wood on top of ours, and you can see we have just enough. It's actually perfect at the point of wood to trim on both sides to get up to here, and then we cut this square, and then we'll come back and make a separate cut to cut the scallop. So I'm going to trace this out, and then we'll move to the bandsaw. Okay, there's our piece roughed out. Got some sanding to do and a little bit of carving here and there, but we'll get it ready to go. So I'll bring you back. Okay, after some sanding, here's our piece. Of course, we're going to have to re-drill this hole, and I'll do that when I get ready to fit it up. Okay, we're back on the fit of the piece that we created. Okay, I realized that this sweep of this cross piece on our chair has to meet the beginning of the sweep right here to be aesthetically pleasing. And so what I did is I took the actual cross piece from the chair that we're working on, cut off one of the dowels, and then used half a dowel to pin this in the position it's going to be in when the chair is assembled. And you can see we're off by maybe a 1/16 or maybe an 1/8 of an inch So what I want to do is cut off this much more so that this transition is perfectly smooth. And I think it'll also lighten up the look of our sweep. So what I'll do is just take a pair of dividers and measure, and it's very difficult for you to see, but measure the distance from here to here. Put the dividers, I'll do it bigger with my fingers. So I'll have, one divider up against the wood, the other divider here, and I'll just trace that line. So we're going to be tracing this 1/16 of an inch, and I'll remove that wood, and that'll give us the transition that we want to have this be aesthetically pleasing and correct. And using this little pair of engineer's dividers, or compass I guess you could call it, as I said, I put the caliper on the line and the caliper on the edge, and then I drew it across, and that scored a line, and then I filled that line in with pencil, and that's the sweep of the curve that we want to remove. And again, I'll do that on the bandsaw, and I'll bring you back. Now we got it. That flows just the way it's supposed to. Okay, we're done with the work on this piece for now, and we'll start working on reassembling this chair in preparation for refinishing. That looks nice. Okay, we're starting to dry assemble the chair prior to re-gluing it, and this is the joint that we rebuilt, and I've got this shaped now and then marked for reassembly. There are no dowels in here at this time. Actually there's one dowel in there I think at that time. What we need to do is mark for that second dowel. As you remember, the second dowel was broken off, and we need to know where the hole is. The way we do that is by using these. These are called dowel centers, and what they are little metal inserts that fit the dowel hole, and they have a little sharp point in there, exactly in their center. So if you put this in the dowel hole of the neighboring piece of wood, when you press them together, it will mark a little dimple where you want to drill your hole. Now our dowels are 3/8. This is a 3/8 dowel center. So what I'm going to do now is get that marked. I'm going to need all of my hands, so I'll do my best to stay out of your way, but hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, we've got our lines lined up, our dowel is in. We're going to press this. Now you don't have to clamp this all the way in, but I'm going to do it because I want to make sure that we're completely lined up. And I want to make sure that I don't put so much pressure on the outside of this that I damage it. But you can see these lines that I marked ahead of time are backing lines, so we know we're in the right spot. Let's see how we did on the inside. This is why it's so important to dry fit before you start throwing glue around, or you will have a heck of a mess. And there we go. And you can see that this underneath is just a little bit that was left of the dowel hole, and then obviously you can see the line where the new wood that we put in is, and right there is where we want to drill our 3/8 inch hole. So I'm going to clamp this up, drill the hole, and see how we did. And there's our new hole, and when we stick a dowel in it, we're lined up. Let's see how it lies when we clamp it. And there's your joint with the clamp applied, and that's the joint that we rebuilt. I think that looks pretty good. Alright, I think I'm probably going to glue up this subassembly by itself and give it an hour or two to set, and then I'll work on the rest of the chair. That way I don't have a bazillion different joints I got to worry about. So we're going to get this subassembly glued up, and I'll bring you back when that's done. And we have the back frame subassembly all glued together. It came together very nicely. Joints here and here. The large back pieces. This thin backsplat here, whenever I have one of these, I never glue them the length of either joint because they need to expand and contract, and if they're locked down here, they'll crack. So what I normally do is just put a dab of glue in the center just to keep it from rattling around, but it can still expand and contract. Although this one, I believe, is made out of veneered plywood. And you can see our joint up there nice and tight, and our joint there is nice and tight, and that's the joint that we redid. Scarfed down a new piece of wood, cut it, carved it, sanded it, lined it up, drilled a new dowel hole, and it's all ready to go. Well, listen, I'm going to continue working on this entire project, but what I've got ahead of me is pretty repetitive. I have to just take chairs apart, clean them, re-glue them, replace a couple of stretchers. You've seen me do that, and also they need to be refinished. So once they're all glued back together, they'll get stripped and refinished, just like you've seen me do 1,000 times. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to show you two different methods of repairing broken wood. Putting a new piece in was what we did here, and then on the other chair, which is over here, we used epoxy putty. And I haven't gotten around to finish sanding this, but you can see just how strong that is. So we're going to wrap this video here. So anyways, from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Best regards. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video. Take good care. Bye.